Let's just forget everything you think you know about philosophy. Because the book we're going to dive into today, it's not some dry academic text written for a quiet library. No, this is something so much more raw, so much more personal. This is a private journal, a series of notes to self, written under almost unimaginable stress by one of the most powerful men in the world, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius.
At the end of one of the books in his Meditations, there's this little note. It's just a lotation. But that one little line, it tells you everything you need to know. This stuff wasn't written in some marble palace in Rome with servants bringing him grapes. It was scribbled down in a freezing military tent on the absolute edge of the empire during a brutal war. And that is the context for every single word that follows. This is a man trying to hold himself together in the absolute heart of chaos.
You have to understand, the pressure on this guy was relentless. For him, philosophy wasn't some kind of hobby, an intellectual game. It was a lifeline. It was a practical, absolutely necessary tool that he needed every single day for his own mental and spiritual survival. So let's just take a look at the storm he was trying to weather. I mean, look at this. His entire time as emperor was just one crisis after another. He gets the throne and bam, immediately thrown into wars on multiple fronts. Then this horrific plague, probably smallpox, just rips through the empire, killing millions. And as if that weren't enough, his most trusted general, a guy he thought of as a brother, betrays him and declares himself emperor. And in the end, he dies right where he was writing all of this, in a tent on campaign. The real question is, how on earth does anyone endure this?
Well, his answer was to go inward. He knew he couldn't control the plagues, he couldn't control the wars, he couldn't control the betrayals. The only thing he had any real power over was his response to them. And so his entire goal was to build what he called an inner citadel, a fortress inside his own mind that no amount of chaos, no matter how violent it got on the outside, could ever breach. And his philosophy was put to the test right away. Just try to imagine a disease so bad it wipes out maybe a third of the entire population in some areas. There's no modern medicine, right? No scientific explanation. There is just suffering and death on a scale that is almost impossible for us to comprehend. This was the Antonine Plague. For a warrior emperor, a guy whose whole life is about legions and strategy, this was a unique kind of hell. It's an enemy you can't reason with, you can't negotiate with it, and you can't fight it with a sword. It was just this invisible force completely outside of his control. And so, faced with that total powerlessness, he reached for a very specific Stoic tool to try and reframe the whole situation. This quote right here shows his method perfectly. He's coaching himself. He's reminding himself over and over that the event itself, the plague, and his judgment about the event are two totally separate things. The plague is an external fact, but the suffering, the terror, the despair, he saw those as internal opinions that we add on top of it. He truly believed that if he could just stop his internal complaints, he could endure the external horror without being spiritually broken by it.
So while Marcus is on the frontier dealing with war and this horrific plague, he gets the worst possible news. Avidius Cassius, his most brilliant general in the East, a man he truly trusted and considered a friend, has revolted. He's declared himself emperor. And this wasn't just a political crisis. For Marcus, this was a deep, painful, personal betrayal. And what happens next? His reaction is just staggering. Before Marcus can even march to confront him, Cassius is killed by his own officers. So when Marcus hears the news, you'd think he'd be relieved, right? Triumphant, even? Nope. By all accounts, he was deeply disappointed. Why? Because the traitor's death had robbed him of what he called the luxury of forgiveness. I mean, what kind of person, what kind of philosophy leads to reaction like that? Well, this is it. This is the foundation. Marcus genuinely believed that all human beings are part of a single organism, that we were literally made for cooperation with each other. He didn't see Cassius as some monster who needed to be destroyed. He saw him as a relative, a kinsman, who was just acting out of ignorance of his own true nature. For Marcus, responding to betrayal with anger was as illogical as your left hand refusing to help your right hand. His first instinct was never revenge. It was this deep desire to heal the wound in the human family. So we have plague, we have betrayal, and then finally there's the one challenge that nobody escapes, his own mortality. Riding in that cold tent, surrounded by death, old and worn out from decades of war, Marcus had to confront that universal fear of the end. And he did the exact same thing he did with the plague.
He worked to separate the event of death from his judgment about it. He actively reframed it, stripping away all the terrifying stories that we tell ourselves. He came to see it not as some evil thing, but simply as a natural process. Birth is the combining of elements, death is just their dissolving. One is no more terrible than the other. Both, he wrote, are just mysteries of nature.
He uses this incredibly powerful metaphor. Life is a play. And what matters isn't whether the play is 5x long or only 3. What matters is how well you played your part. He wasn't afraid of dying too soon because, he argued, the length of a life is ultimately irrelevant. The only thing that matters is to play your assigned role with virtue and with grace, and then to exit the stage when the director, the universe itself, gives you the signal. So, what do we take away from all this? I mean, these aren't just fascinating thoughts from some ancient emperor. They are a practical, timeless toolkit for resilience that was forged in the fire of real crisis. Really, his whole philosophy can be boiled down to these 4 actionable exercises. First, and this is the big one, practice separating what happens from your opinion about what happens. Second, when other people hurt you, remember your shared humanity with them. Third, try to see challenges not as personal attacks, but just as part of the natural, indifferent flow of the universe. And fourth, reframe your own mortality. See it not as a terror, but as the natural conclusion to your part in the play. And that really leaves us with the final thought, doesn't it? We might not be facing plagues or rebellions, but we all face our own struggles, with loss, with disappointment, with our own mortality. And the question that Marcus Aurelius leaves us with, 2,000 years later, is this. If these mental tools could build a fortress of peace inside the most powerful man in the world during the worst of times, what kind of peace could they build for us, right here, right now?